So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining the Q&A session on the Fellowship Call Round 5. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Sarita Fortuin. I'm the Program Manager for Validate, and I'm based at Stellenbosch University in Cape Town, South Africa. So I just want to, before we start the presentation, mention that this call is only open for LMIC associate members of the Validate Network. So the Validate Network is aimed at building a network where we aim to accelerate vaccine research and develop vaccine research and development for complex intracellular pathogens. These diseases include, these pathogens include Mycobacteria, Leishmania, and Burkholderia pseudomyeli. Our network is focused around the development of early career researchers because we realize that early career researchers in LMIC countries have several inequities. And so this is the focus of Validate Research, Validate Network. Just to mention that once again, this fellowship call is open to LMIC associate members only. The maximum amount for this grant is £100,000. The budget must align with the research proposal. It includes, it can include a salary, lab costs, research costs, including consumables, travel, animal work, but I will elaborate on that a bit later. Applications will go through the Network Management Board, where it will be reviewed. Things that the Network Management Board will look at if it falls within the Validate remit, if it falls within the 3 pathogens as I've mentioned, Mycobacteria, Leishmania, and Burkholderia. It must be scientifically sound, and research must contribute to the knowledge base to accelerate vaccine development. This fellowship call is for a duration of 24 months, 2 years, and it must be led by an LMIC associate Validate member. The project must lead to generation of relevant and useful data in the field, and the project must be distinctly different from previously funded Validate applications. Moving on to the eligibility. I want to reiterate that this call is only for Validate Network associate members. If you are not yet an associate member, please submit your application for membership, and it's free on the Validate website. Only LMIC countries or applicants from LMIC countries will be eligible for this specific call. And also they can be at any academic institute, a governmental institute, or a non-governmental institute. These include industries. Countries that are not eligible to apply are high-income countries: Belarus, China, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. Unfortunately, India falls within the high-income category, and Iran. Please follow the link on our website to see if your country falls within the LMIC category. Moving on to the application form, you will find all the documents on the website. But just to take you through the process of the application form, please read the fellowship guidelines as it is attached on the website. Remember, you must be an associate level to apply for this fellowship call. Validate has to abide by the funders' rules, as well as UK and USA sanctions lists, and this is where our funders are based. You should have a senior scientist mentor to guide you or to support you in this application. If you have a collaborator, and this is not a prerequisite, if you have a collaborator, please include all this information on the application form, because there's also a section for collaborators to include. Please indicate if they are from a low middle income country or high income country, as well as what level your collaborator is. in the Validate network membership list, they must be a Validate member, unfortunately. Moving on to the budget. Each institute that is listed on this application must complete the budget separately. The first section, 10.1, is for you as the lead applicant of this as fellow. We have included, as you will see on the template, there's a full economic costing. This does not apply to LMIC countries since this is only expected of UK-based institutions. Also, please list all the items that's related to the proposed project that you are submitting. These include consumables, animals, any travel related to this proposal, but I will expand a bit later on this. Similarly, for your collaborator, please include their budget specifications, anything that is related specifically to this proposal. You have listed in this table the items that are eligible for this application. Your salary as fellow must include over a period of 24 months. You can include consumables. This includes lab consumables, any consumable related to your project. It can include animal purchases and housing, sample shipment, etc. Equipment more than £10,000 will not be allowed. Anything below that will be categorized as a consumable. You are allowed to submit costs related to training specifically to this proposal, any travel relating to meetings with your collaborators, any specific training, short-term training, that will be allowed. Please note, we will only reimburse or pay for economic class flights. Other direct costs may be included, such as access fees, but specify for each of your budget items, specify and put the justification for each item in your application. We do allow a maximum of 20% indirect costs, and remember your maximum budget is £100,000. Just to summarize, once again, your maximum budget is £100,000. You are allowed to, please make sure that all proposed research must be within the Validate remit. It can include a salary for 24 months for the fellow. Lab consumables are allowed. We will pay for travel costs, including training, essential meetings with your project collaborator, and remember, only economic class flights will be reimbursed. Remember to put a justification for each budget item so that it can show that it relates to your project. And remember, it must be in British pounds. Not eligible costs. Remember, this is only for LMICs. High-income institutes are not eligible to apply. Research outside the Validate remit will not be funded. Applications led by Validate investigators and affiliates will not be allowed. We will not fund equipment purchases. And remember that Oxford University and Stellenbosch University are obliged to abide by the funders' rules and regulations. And so export control, sanction regulations, National Security and Investments Act, and the Academic Technology Approval Scheme applies when we review your applications for this. When you are planning your proposal for submission, please make sure that you have thought about your ethics. Make sure that you know which ethics apply for your project. Remember, for human samples or data from human samples, you will have to seek advice from your own institute where your research will be conducted. Validate expects that all research involving human participants be undertaken in accordance with the UK and South African level ethical behavior. Ensure that you have ethics approval before funding can be initiated, because remember, this takes a long time, and it depends on where you are based, and also the procedures involved. All legal requirements for the import and export of biological material must be adhered to. Discuss this with your collaborator, discuss the processes that, the experiments that will be done, and also the timeframes in which this will occur. If you are uncertain, refer to the fellowship guidance document. We've listed a number of documents that you can read up on. Then I want to briefly just discuss the application process. The call already opened on the 20th of December last year. And so you would have seen this in the newsletters and on the social media platforms. Today we are doing the Q&A session where you are able to ask the questions that we haven't addressed yet. We are providing, from Validate's side, additional grant writing support. And on the website, we stated that it will be on the closing for this will be on the 7th of February, but we've decided to extend this until the 14th of February. I will elaborate a bit on this later. It's important that all of you are aware that this call closes at 4 p.m. On the 11th of April, 2025. We will not accept any applications after the 4 p.m. on the 11th of April. After this, your applications will be pulled together and sent to the NMB for review. At the NMB meeting, the short list of applicants will be decided, and they will be contacted to prepare for the interview thereafter. Once the interviews have been completed, we will then send outcome letters to everyone stating if they are successful or not. We then have to go through a due diligence process to set up contracts with successful fellows. And we envisage that the fellowships will start during August of 2025. We know that grant writing is quite challenging, and for most of you, this might be the first time that you are actually submitting an application of this magnitude. And so we have come up or put together a list of tips and advice for you to help you get through this process. Firstly, make sure that you have read the guidelines carefully. Make sure that you are eligible for this specific call. We do not want you to waste your time getting to the end and then we have to throw out your application. So please note, this is only for LMIC country associate level members. If you're not eligible, please do not apply. If you're not an associate member, your application will be immediately disqualified, so do not apply. If your research is not within the Validate remit, you are wasting your time, and we don't want you to go through all this trouble for nothing. So basically, the call has been open for a month, so you should have started a month ago. It takes at least 3 months to write a good application. So if you haven't started yet, please make an effort and to start. Make sure that you have factored in the timelines for this application. Make sure that you know who you should get your letters of support from. Discuss with your collaborators. Do not wait. Time goes very quickly. The 11th of April is around the corner. Also, when you discuss or decide on or build your project proposal, think about your budget while you're doing this. Get to know your institution's research and finance officers. Make sure that you know what the internal deadlines are. If you have any internal deadlines, use the templates supplied on the website. This is the template is made so that in a way that you can break it down into smaller pieces. It can be very overwhelming to write such an application, as I've said. So the application form helps you to break it down in smaller pieces, and you can work on it section by section. Don't forget to make sure that you have all the additional documents from your collaborators, and your own documents as well. Please stick to the rules. Take note of the maximum budget. Take note of the cues that we've put in the template, because these are the things that will be looked at when your application is reviewed. This is also some feedback from the reviewers from previous rounds of applications and other funding calls in Validate. And then we try to put this together to make you, help you through this process and make it a bit easier. So write concisely, professionally, and for a knowledgeable, but not a specialized audience. Remember, your reviewers work in the field, but they might not work on the particular pathogen or the specific technology that you will be applying. State clearly what your aims and your objectives are. Make sure that your project is ambitious, but it is feasible within the 24-month time frame. Show that you have read the literature and that your project builds on current knowledge. Get plenty of other people to read your application to check if it makes sense, and to an outside person to check for errors and typos. Sometimes we miss this once we've looked at that document so many times. Remember, there's a hard deadline of the 11th of April. Do not leave your submission to the closing date. This causes a lot of last-minute stress. Do not wait until that last minute. There has been several incidences where either the internet, in South Africa, we have load shedding, the electricity goes out, the internet goes out, and you are strapped for time. So make sure that you submit ahead of the deadline. We would recommend 48 hours, but yeah, make sure that you submit before the deadline to avoid any issues. From Validate side, we are providing additional grant writing support. And this deadline is extended to the 14th of February, next week, Friday, where you will have the opportunity to work with a grant writing mentor. Also, we have other online workshops available on the Validate website and on the Validate Hub if you are registered. And also there are some FAQ questions available online as well. Just to elaborate on the grant writing mentor, Prof. Helena has been working with us for several rounds of applications now, and she's quite familiar with Validate's remit and has supported many of our applicants and has had successful applicants. So we will offer one-on-one sessions with Prof. Helena to help you through the grant writing process and help you set out and clearly detail your project. And the service is free of charge. So do not stress about this. Just let us know before the 14th of February, next week, Friday, if you are interested in using this resource. And with that, I think I've said what I wanted to say. And so please, if there's anything we haven't covered now in the presentation or during the FAQ after this, please contact us at Validate, and you will find all the information of the application process, the documents for fellowships on the website. Thank you, Blakely.
So Sue, I'll just kick off the Q&A. I've been typing away while you've been giving that great presentation. Thank you. So I will just go quickly through the questions that have been in the chat to kick off the Q&A so that we don't repeat those questions. And then Sue will obviously be happy to take any questions from everybody. So most of you know me, I'm Sam Mark. I'm the Validate Executive Manager, and really delighted that we have so many people on the call interested in this fellowship call. So a couple of questions that have come up in the chat, which you can have a read through, but just to help you all out to cover them quickly here. We've had questions about whether it's mandatory to have 100% of your salary included in the budget. So this is covered in our FAQ document in more detail. If your salary is can be covered by elsewhere, so from another grant with match funding or from your institute, then you don't have to include your salary in your fellowship budget. But whoever is paying your salary will have to confirm that they are happy for you to spend at least 80% of your time on your fellowship project. And you should obviously explain this in your resource justification. So this is not a question the reviewers will think about. As I said, there's more details on this question in our FAQs document, which you can find on the fellowship webpage. So have a look at that if this is a question for you. Another question that has come up is querying whether upper middle income countries can apply. So applicants can be based in any low or middle income country as defined by the UK's ODA, Overseas Development Assistance list. Again, you've got a link on our fellowship webpage to the list of the UK's ODA list. And any country that is listed in any of the columns, so low or middle income country, is okay to apply for this call, apart from the few exceptions that we have listed in our guidance document, which are due to sanctions and other reasons. So have a look if your country is on anywhere, any column on the UK ODA website, then you are eligible to apply unless you are one of the excluded countries. So that hopefully helps you with that one. Then we've had a query about, can you include salary costs for a collaborator? Can you include salary costs for a mentor? So you can include salary costs if they're a collaborator. You cannot include salary costs for a mentor. Okay, next question was about the remit. So obviously, as Sue has mentioned, the research that you're putting in your fellowship application needs to directly relate to vaccine development against Validate's 3 focus pathogen groups. And the question was, does this mean immunological research is prioritized, or an epidemiological study that supports need of a vaccine in a country is also within the remit? So the answer to that is that Validate's remit covers anything that feeds into vaccine development for our pathogens. So immunology obviously is absolutely applicable, but also epidemiology studies are fine because they feed into the need for clinical trials or where you can do clinical trials. So I would recommend that for the latter, or if you're doing something slightly more tangential than an obvious feed into the pipeline, do make sure that you, in your application, clearly state how your project and the research and the outcomes from your project will feed into vaccine development. So you might say, for example, for an epidemiology study, that you would be finding out a future market for the vaccines, or as I said, looking for whether that country or that area region would be suitable for a clinical trial for vaccines for that disease. Okay, then the next question was, are there any fellowships available at Validate for associates based in high-income countries? So our prior round of fellowships that was last year, mid-last year, had high-income country fellowships on offer as well. We actually awarded all our high-income country fellowship funds in that round, which is why this call is only for low and middle-income country-based members. Obviously, if we get further funding in the future to fund more fellowships, then future rounds may include both high-income and low and middle-income countries, but at the moment, this call is only for low and middle-income countries because of that. Okay. Next question was, is it possible for a group of researchers to collaborate with non-Validate members? Nope. Your collaborators have to be Validate members, as Sue explained. Then we had a question about how you upgrade from affiliate to associate membership and what is the criteria. So again, this is outlined clearly in our FAQs document available on the fellowship website, so do have a look at that. But essentially, you need to have completed your PhD in order to qualify as an associate. We have some exceptions, but that's usually the rule. And basically to upgrade, if you've done your PhD and you're currently an affiliate and you want to upgrade so that you're eligible for this call, just go to the Validate website and you'll be able to see the process is on there, clearly listed how you upgrade. And I think that is all the ones that I've done. So we've got some other questions that I can go through at the moment. So if that's right, Sue. Shall I carry on?
Yes, I know this.
Okay, so Olga has said, based on the list, can a researcher from Columbia apply to the Validate Fellowships? So again, look on the LMIC list on the website and you'll see Columbia is in the list of all the 4 columns. So that means you are allowed to apply. I'm not going to take questions on every single country. You need to look at the list, but Columbia is on there. Right, is a proposal related to diagnostics validation possible? So again, diagnostics are required for clinical trials. So this would be related to our remit. So you would need to clearly state how it's relevant to vaccine development. But I will warn you now, if we got a lot of applications, that diagnostics projects would be less well received and less likely to receive funding than something more directly applicable. So you want to weigh up whether you want to potentially waste your time applying because you're not fully within remit. You're kind of on the edge. So weigh up whether it's worth it or whether you would be better served using your time to apply to a funder where this is more central to their remit. But it's not completely outside the bounds of possibility, but definitely, as I say, tie it into our remit to make sure the NMB can see that you've tied it in and thought about it. Okay. Next question from Zimbo. Must we submit a draft proposal next week, Friday, for the writing support, or are we just indicating our interest via email? So you're just indicating your interest, and then Helena will work with you on your proposal. So you just need to drop us an email literally saying, I'm interested in LMIC support. Please, can you put me in contact with Helena? And Sue will do that. So just email the Validate inbox. Right. As an affiliate member, can I pick up a fellowship in the area of interest? Nope, you need to be an associate. I'm going to start being a bit brutal with some of these if I've already answered it. Is it allowable to put the salary as a stipend? If it's your salary, then yes, you can put it in there. Stipend is normally for a student. So if you're a student, you wouldn't be eligible for this grant call. So just have a think with your finance team about what would work for that. Is it a must to include collaborators? No. You don't have to include collaborators on fellowship calls. It's not even recommended. It's just if it adds a value or adds an aspect to your project, then feel free to add them, but you absolutely don't have to add collaborators for fellowships. This budget for 1 or 2 years. So it's 2 years. Fellowships are for 2 years, so your budget needs to cover 2 years. Right, I think that's all the questions on the chat. Sue, I'll turn back to you. Anyone else who wants to put a question, like speak up and ask a question, we would welcome that.
There's a raised hand.
Exactly, that's what I'm going to let Sue command now.
Are there any raised hands?
Yeah, Rudy's got one. Rudy, do you want to go?
Yes, Sam, thank you so much for answering all of it. Just a silly question, maybe on the form. So I didn't see any section to put references for the entire proposal. So will that be counted in the section with the word limit, or can we add it separately?
So
like the references.
So again, this is answered in our FAQs. Yeah, basically, no, doesn't count in the word limit.
Cool, thank you, thanks.
Okay, Sue, while you monitor for hands, do people put up your hands if you want to ask a question? I can see there's another question in the chat. So I had another question. How much post-PhD work experience or first author publications exclude you from being considered an early career researcher? So when you submit your application for membership to Validate, you're graded into the 3 different membership levels, and that's based on our assessment of where you are in your career, which is then helps us say that anyone who's an associate can apply for a fellowship. So if you have been made an associate member of Validate, you are eligible to apply for this call. If you have been made an investigator, whereby the Network Management Board think that you are senior enough to be one, then you're not eligible for this call. You wouldn't count as an ECR. So it's a bit of a judgment call. It depends. We don't have a sharp cutoff, but normally the difference between affiliate and associate is affiliate can be anybody, associates have PhDs, and then investigator compared to associate, investigators usually have their own grants, they lead a group, or however big, could be small or big, but they have their own scientific independence by having their own group and not having a research leader above them, and having their own research grants. So I hope that answers that. Alienka, did you want to ask a question?
All right, Sam, good to hear from you.
Hey, nice to see you.
Yeah, you just answered the question I was about asking because, of course, I know I'm a long-time member and I was kind of beginning to doubt if I will still be qualified to apply. Considering that, well, I think this is one of the few fellowship courses that has a broader scope as against previous fellowship courses that's kind of focused on TB. And so it's like this extends to some of the areas that so I was like, well, will I still be qualified to, submit an application?
Yeah, so again, I think this is not FAQs, but essentially where we have criteria, they're listed in our guidance or in our FAQs. If we haven't stated you have to be within a certain number of years after your PhD, then we don't have a criteria for that. Funders are increasingly moving towards not having you must be within 8 years past your PhD because people have so many different career paths. So we don't have any limit on that. And as you note, this call is open to all 3 pathogen groups. You're right that the last fellowship round was Gates funded. So 2 rounds ago was Gates funded. So that was just TB, but this one's open to all the different pathogen groups.
I'm trying to see if there are more hands.
Elianka, did you have a further question or have you just
Yes,
got your hand up still? Go for it.
Thank you. Something just popped up again.
That's
now,
right.
somebody asked a question about, diagnostic related study and even epidemiological study. Now, I want to use the context of Nigeria, for example. I believe that, some of these basic, studies are quite essential before you can build a case, to think about doing vaccine, So Nigeria hasn't gotten much around, even the epidemiology or even diagnostic validation of some of the existing, diagnostic kits. So I don't know how much Validate will be willing to look at the context situation of where the study is about to be done if they will want to allow for diagnostic study or epidemiological related study.
Okay, thanks for your question. So the NMB obviously are very experienced senior scientists from the network, and they will weigh up many different factors when they are reviewing the applications. And obviously you're judged against your peers in terms of the relevance. One thing I would say is that I think you don't want to niche from previous NMB review comments. I would say you don't want to niche too tightly. So obviously Validate wants vaccines. We want to help vaccines develop in the field. And so you could have super niched projects that where the outcome was only relevant to that area. And we probably wouldn't be interested in funding those just because we would be more interested in funding projects that have wider relevance. So if you are doing something that's quite niched or quite localized, you want to then explain in your justification or in your explanation of the project and the outputs, you want to explain how that would be applicable to the wider field and the wider picture of vaccine development, just to show that you have thought about that and to show how your results could feed into other areas and not just be a very small answer. I hope that helps. But it's a judgment call by the NMB.
Yeah, thank you.
Sue, please obviously chip in if I'm, with anything else I'm forgetting.
Yeah. There's nothing else here, no one else.
Okay, and then Olga has just asked, will this presentation be recorded for later viewing? Yes, it will be available on our YouTube channel. Enjoy. Has anyone got any further questions?
Okay. Please don't hesitate to contact the Validate Network if you still do not feel, but refer to the FAQ, refer back to the YouTube recording of this presentation. Yeah, I think that's it from our side. Thank you everyone for joining. Bye.
Thanks everybody. Bye-bye.
Hi, Helena.